I hate factorising. I always have, I always will, and this video is for people like me. When you get a question like this, it looks incredibly complicated, but believe it or not, it's actually really simple, and I'm going to show you a method to both show that x plus 1 is a factor and fully factorise this function without doing any sort of factorising. You're going to factorise without factorising. So first of all, show that x plus 1 is a factor. This is actually very simple. So first of all, we take this, the positive 1, and we flip the sign. So this becomes negative 1. And then we just set that to x and substitute that in. So minus 1 cubed minus 10. Let's do this. Now, the way the factor theorem works, if the result of this calculation is 0, negative 1 is a factor and therefore this statement is correct and you solved it. There you go. Equals 0, and that is all you've got to do for part A. Moving on to part B. This is where it does get a little bit more complicated, but it's okay, because I can promise you right now I'm never going to ask you what goes into this, because I've had teachers ask me that, and to be honest, the answer is still, I have no idea and I don't care. So let's do it without that. We already have one factor, which is all we need. So let's write down minus 1, which is the first factor that we know. There's going to be 3 factors total. Then we just take the coefficients of this function. So starting with 1, even though there's no 1 shown here, it's the equivalent of 1x cubed. So we're going to write 1. Then we've got minus 10, make sure you include the signs, a positive 19, and a positive 30. This is called synthetic division, and it's my favourite way to do it because you don't have to ever find out what's put into this or what goes into that. No, we don't do that. This drops down straight away, 1. Then you're going to multiply this by this and then add this. That's all you're doing. So yes, you can do this in your head, but just for demonstration, minus 1 times 1 is obviously minus 1, and then a plus minus 10 is just going to be minus 10, which gives us minus 11. So we write minus 11 right here, and then you do the same thing again. Minus 1, this number times minus 11, and then plus 19, which gives us, what is that, 30. And then you do the same thing again. Minus 1 times the new number, 30, plus the next number, 30, which gives us 0. Now this is quite important. Depending on the level that you are, your remainder might not always be 0. But for me, I'm doing AS level mathematics, so I only get questions where the remainder is 0. If you're doing A level mathematics, or you're doing mathematics at university, your remainder might not always be 0. But I'm going to go on assuming that your remainder is 0, because if you are at the level of study that I am at right now, your remainder is always going to be 0. So let's move on. What we now have is a quadratic. This comes straight down, 1x squared minus 11x plus 30. Don't worry, it is always in this form. It is always this number x squared, this number x, this number on its own. It's always going to appear that way, and let's just add the equals 0 because it is quadratic. Now we just have to solve this. Now you probably know how to do this already if you've studied maths before, but if not, we're going to go through it anyway. There's 2 ways that I like to do it. There is a third, which is factorising, which, as you know, I hate, so we're not going to be doing that. The first way is using your calculator, and the second way is doing it manually. So I'm going to show you both. If you're short on time, just go for it on the calculator, but if your paper states solutions relying on calculator technology are not acceptable, you're going to have to do it on paper, otherwise you won't get the mark. So on a calculator, obviously it depends on the make, but I go to Home, go to Equation, choose Polynomial, and then ax squared plus bx plus c. And we enter our numbers. 1x squared minus 11x and plus 30 is going to give us 2 solutions. As always, we have 6 and we have 5. Now, if you want to do it like this, great, but just to demonstrate how you would do that in a manual way if you're not able to use calculators, we're going to use the quadratic equation, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And each of these letters represents the coefficient. I'm sure you've seen all this before. So a is going to equal, what's this, 1. B is going to equal minus 11. Always keep in mind your signs. And C is going to equal a positive 30. So let's substitute that in. Negative and negative, so minus 11 is the same as positive 11, so we have 11 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 11 squared. Make sure to put it in brackets, that is very important because that might change your result if you're working with a negative like we are. It's always good to get into the habit of putting your numbers in brackets. Minus 4, a is 1, c is 30, over 2 times a, which is 1. And now we just get to solve this. So 4 times 1 times 30, let's do that. Minus 4 times 1 times 30 gives us minus 120. And minus 11 squared in brackets, we get 121. So 121 minus 120, that is going to be 1. And the square root of 1 is just 1. So what we now have is 11 plus or minus 1 divided by 2 times 1 is just 2. And now we just do both of these. We've got 11 plus 1 over 2, we get 6, and 11 minus 1 over 2, we get 5. You get the same thing. It's just whatever method you prefer to use or whatever method you're told to use. Now we're going to put this into brackets. Now this is very simple to do. All you have to do is take the two numbers, you've got 6 and 5, flip the signs, minus 6, minus 5, and put them into brackets with x. So what you've got is x minus 6, close bracket, x minus 5. And now, because we have to include the third factor, we're just going to include the initial one that we're given in the question. X plus 1 is a factor, x plus 1, and there you go. Now, the way they like you to give your answers is as saying the factor, which is this, the factorised version equals the expanded version. So we're going to write it in the way that is standardised. And there you are. That is our final answer. And that is full marks. Thanks for watching and have a lovely day.